Well, thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Nathan, for actually agreeing to do this session with me. I'm actually super excited to talk about some of those latest capabilities with the PowerFX offering that Microsoft is doing.
Me too, man. We've been wanting to do this for a while, so I'm super stoked, and thank you for asking me.
Oh, absolutely. And Nathan, you and I have been part of that journey since day one. So we started early, like when we heard about the preview, we were actually really interested in doing that, especially not necessarily the PowerFX stuff that has been around in Canvas app for a while, but the low-code plugins. And I see a lot of value in it because like I've got a big team that I'm working with and not everybody's technical. So typically we would have some little requirements that would say we need to add a little bit of automation after an event happens, when you save a record or when you go and update a record. And typically we would either look at legacy solutions, like using the legacy workflows that we know are getting a bit clunky and old to use, or we would go Power Automate, which comes with its own overhead and so on. And mainly because the majority of the people on my team are not necessarily technical and don't know how to use .NET or write code in C#. So our choices were limited. And then when we saw those low-code plugins, we just jumped on it straight away, and then we started using it. And I think like feedback that I got from Microsoft is that they really appreciate sort of the engagement that you and I had with them because we helped them shape what that product is going to look like. And it's still in its infancy. So that's why those sessions are really important. I did a similar session when I was at the Canadian Summit, and I heard a lot of feedback from the community over there saying, oh, can it do this? How about, it has this limitation. Is that going to be addressed? So I'm really keen to keep this session interactive, to hear back from people in this call to say, ask questions and then, poke holes into it so that we can actually take that feedback back to Microsoft and then, help them improve on that product.
100%. So my favorite thing when I am presenting this, and I've done this a few times now in user groups all over the world, is the absolute best part of these sessions is the Q&A and the questions, especially the ones where I go, I don't know, challenge accepted, let's go figure it out. I get some of my best ideas and content from you guys. So ask away, whatever it is. No question is too large, small. Play stump the MVP. You definitely will in my case. If I answer it depends, it's because I don't know the answer. But just ask away, because we get some great ideas from the things that you guys are thinking about and wanting to do with this.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go through the presentation. I think part of it is just establishing the scene. And then after that, we've got some really cool hands-on demos that you and I, Nathan, will be doing. Just starting by welcoming everybody to the Wellington Dynamics user group. So we are, this user group is actually based in Wellington, although we're doing this session as 100% online for a few reasons, because I wanted to present with Nathan, and I wanted to give everybody like an equal experience by having it online. And then that also opens up for other people overseas to come and join us. So it's Anderson, thank you for joining all the way from the US. But that means a lot to us that we have actually a reach that goes beyond New Zealand and beyond New Zealand and Australia. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, cool. So just to set the scene, recently we've heard a lot of numbers about sort of the number of applications that are being written using the Power Platform. So those numbers are coming from Microsoft, and then they're stating that 750 million applications are going to be written using, Canvas apps by 2025, which is quite a large number of applications. And as a result, given the high demand that this platform has, we're going to have a shortfall of 4 million developers by 2025 again. So if you think about that, that's actually not an insignificant number. It's almost like I like to say that Microsoft is suffering from its own success because they've put so much effort and investment into making that platform, as Charles Lamanna would put it, like the most uncontestable, like the best low-code platform that is available in the market right now everybody wants Power Platform, everybody wants to use it, and as such, the demand on skilled people has increased significantly, but there aren't enough people in the market to actually deliver all of that. And that's why I think those sessions are really good, because those 4 million people, a few of them are on this call. So you guys are the people that will be delivering some of that goodness. Now, they also predict that 65% of those applications are actually going to be written using low-code capabilities. So that's also an interesting factor in there, is to be able to actually cater for that high demand. You need to democratize it. You need to make it accessible for a wider range of people. If you only lock it to developers, then this is a very specific skill set. So pro developers are difficult to find, they're pricey and so on, whereas people that may have maybe an Excel background or can do some access databases at a high level can probably transition towards the Power Platform and become the Dynamics and Power Platform professionals of the future. Those numbers that I've got on the screen right now are actually outdated. And it's really funny, because every time I put that slide in, I go to previous conferences, I try to get this information from the Microsoft conferences, and then by the time I go and present them, they're already outdated. So the number of active users has risen to 45 million users for the Power Platform, which is quite impressive. 25% of those are pro developers. So as you can see, is only a small portion, a quarter of them, that can do code. So we need to leverage the remaining 75% to also be able to extend the platform and do some goodness with it without limiting ourselves to that 25% pool that we've got in there. Now, in terms of custom connectors that the platform has, when I prepared those slides, which was probably about a month ago, it was around 1,100. And then as I went to the MVP Summit last week, I realized that actually that number has risen to 1,200 connectors, and it's still growing and it's still counting. So it's quite impressive to actually see all of that in action. And that gives you a perspective of how important it is to have capabilities such as low-code plugins, PowerFX, to actually support that demand and then get more people on board of that journey. So if I want you to get one thing out of this session, is the following. So if you want to increase your development throughput, do embrace low-code and do embrace Copilot. Now, today, we're not going to talk about Copilot specifically. I think there's a lot of investment happening in that space, and I would love to spend an entire day talking about Copilot, but the focus will be more on the low-code side of things rather than on the Copilot. But yeah, just think about it. Like it's important to just get the most out of that low-code capability, understand where it works, where it doesn't work, how you can fit it within your organization, and how can you use it moving forward. And that's what Nathan and I will be talking about today, is to actually go through the options that you've got and how widespread PowerFX is becoming within the Power Platform. So a little bit about us. I'm Rami. I'm based in Wellington, as I've mentioned. I work for a company called DXC, which is an international company. We work, being in Wellington, which is the political capital of New Zealand, a lot of the work that we do is in the public sector. So most of my clients are in government. I've been in Microsoft MVP since 2015. And yeah, just recently we went to the MVP Summit, which is always the highlight of the year. So many things that we would like to share with the community. So many new things are coming. So keep an eye on Build if you haven't registered yet. That's happening in May. But yeah, lots of exciting news that we would like to share with the community. Nathan, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Rami. So I'm Nathan Rose. I am a lead consultant at Capgemini. I'm based here in beautiful Auckland, New Zealand. I am a new kid on the block with the Microsoft MVPs. I was just named an MVP in June last year. And Rami's going to be taking us through the PowerFX CLI today. A little embarrassing. I thought that was a detective series on Netflix, but Rami assures me it isn't, and he's going to take us all through how that works with PowerFX. So, but just to give you my low code bona fides, I'm not a CLI guy, but I'm open to being convinced. So I'm looking forward to this part of the demo.
Absolutely, we'll convert you, Nathan. Don't worry about that.
Yep.
All right. Do you want to talk a little bit about the journey, the PowerFX journey?
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll just an overview of our time. We'll take you through what PowerFX is and why you should care about it. So we'll get a little behind the scenes with how PowerFX works, what makes it so special, and why Rami and I are just so passionate about it. We'll then get hands-on with it. We'll take you through some scenarios across the Power Platform just to give you a feel for all the different places it can be used. And then we are going to invite you to join us on this low-code revolution. Wait, I think that's trademarked by Microsoft, this low-code journey. Yeah.
Right.
Anyways,
awesome.
yeah. So that's what we'll be covering off today.
Cool.
So
yeah, go ahead. I think those slides are yours, Nathan. So if you want to cover those.
Yeah, no worries. So what is PowerFX? PowerFX is Microsoft's low-code based formula language that's used to customize the Power Platform. And it's comprised of human-friendly commands. So the idea being that anyone from a citizen to a pro dev can pick it up and start working with it immediately. It's strong typed and declarative. If you're not quite sure what that means, don't worry. I'm going to get into that in the next slide. These are two critical parts of PowerFX that make it super friendly for the low and no code dev, the person who's never done this before, as well as for the pro dev. Secure, performant, and scalable. And the idea being that it works just like Excel. So if you're a bit of a whiz in Excel, then you know exactly how PowerFX works, and you can pretty much pick it up and run with it. Yeah, Rami, anything on secure, performant, and scalable that you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what Microsoft is trying to do is not to compromise. So a lot of discussions that we had at the MVP Summit with the product team is to say, all right, well, you're providing with those, low-code plugins or PowerFX. Does that mean that we're compromising on anything? Does that mean that we're not going to have parity with some of the pro dev tools that we've got in the platform? And the answer is no. We want to make it as just another option, something that can be done in a different way, but will give you more or less the same results. And I think this is really important. So they didn't want to compromise on anything to do with performance, anything to do with scalability, and they wanted to retain the same strong security that the other extension methods have part of that platform. When we first heard about PowerFX, we loved it. And then we went back to Microsoft and we said, how about we have it everywhere? And that was sort of the direction that we took, is like, PowerFX everywhere. Like, just please give us PowerFX in Power Automate, give us PowerFX in Power Pages, give us PowerFX in model-driven apps, because it was just, limited to Canvas apps specifically. Yeah. And then Microsoft listened. So they started actually releasing PowerFX in quite a few bits. Now, some of those areas are still in public preview, so be aware about that. But also they are listening. And when we said expand beyond Canvas apps and go to Power Pages, they thought, that sounds like a good thing. And if you think about it, PowerFX itself is an open source language model, right? Yeah. So you can implement it in your own private repository into your own solution. You can just add PowerFX to it. So from a Microsoft perspective, it's something that can be lifted and shifted and reused somewhere else while providing you with the same consistency across the entire Power Platform. And we love that. We really enjoy doing all of that. So the examples the demonstration that we're going to show you today is just how you can use more or less the same commands, but in different types of the platform to actually provide you with a seamless experience, but also based on the need that you've got. So you could be, for example, as we were talking about earlier, wanting to extend an event in the Dynamics or Dataverse space so that it can execute some code. But sometimes you might say that, I want the same thing to happen when I click a button. Or sometimes you want to say, I want the same thing to execute when I have a DevOps pipeline, an ALM pipeline, for example. I want to use that same code and just move it from one environment to the other, but I want it to do exactly the same thing. And that's the focus on today's presentation. And obviously, with Microsoft spending a lot of time in Copilot, they are also introducing PowerFX and the Copilot Studio capabilities. And I'll quickly demonstrate how you can actually use Copilot to help you figure out how to write your PowerFX commands and so on. Yes, it is low code, but it also has a learning curve, right? So if not everybody is an Excel wizard that can go and start typing those formulas and get them right. So Copilot is there for that exact specific reason, is that so you don't spend a lot of time learning a specific syntax, understanding, how to structure it and so on. But you can just go to Copilot and say, hey, I want to do this. And it will, give you the answer that you need. And you can plug that into your solution. Obviously, a little bit of understanding of what it's doing is important so that you can, tweak it and then get the result that you want.
Yeah, and what's amazing, just to give you an idea of the scale and how fast PowerFX is just proliferating across the Power Platform. Just last week, this slide was referred to as the Stegosaurus of PowerFX because the spikes only came out of the back of it, but it is now turning into the multi-headed Hydra of PowerFX because it has moved from Canvas apps to model-driven apps to Dataverse to the CLI to Power Automate and Copilot Studio. So, I mean, it is just proliferating everywhere across the Power Platform. And just having that unified set of commands to do stuff just makes life so much easier.
Absolutely. And what I really like about that slide is that this is a proof that Microsoft is listening. So the community has asked for those capabilities to be available everywhere, and Microsoft delivered. So keep the feedback coming so that we can actually go back and to Microsoft and provide them with that.
Yeah, the one thing that they are thinking about, I don't think this is under NDA, but they are thinking about the commands the expressions in Power Automate, and looking at bringing PowerFX to that. So if you're as passionate as Rami and I, write your MP, write your senator, write your congressperson, post on LinkedIn. The more they hear the feedback, the more the case is there to do it. So
Yep, absolutely. And like as you said, it's not necessarily on the NDA, but if you use your imagination to think what next, most likely that's on the roadmap. So that's always good to see. All right. So you want to talk a little bit about strongly typed, Nathan?
Yeah. So strong typed, why does that matter? So it took me a while to get my head around this. I actually asked Copilot and it summarized it really nicely. So what Microsoft have done is they've put in the guardrails and the training wheels into PowerFX. So it throws the errors at the head end. If you try to do something, the classic example would be trying to add, say, a string and an integer together. PowerFX is going to say, you can't do that. These are different data types. I don't know what you want me to do. Now, the contrast to that would be a weak type language. This would be your more traditional programming languages that, generally speaking, Rami, correct me if I'm wrong here, but as long as your syntax is okay, it's going to let you compile that code and run it. And so you're not going to really see the error until runtime. It's either going to throw a nasty error and say, I don't know what to do. You're trying to give me a string and an integer, or it'll convert the integer to a string and concatenate them or something like that. But it's what PowerFX is trying to do is foresee the issues and errors and highlight them to you as you're developing your code. And so again, for the first timer, for the citizen dev, that is super critical because it helps you avoid making mistakes that will cause you issues down the road. So so that's strong typed and why this is so special.
Absolutely. All right.
And declarative, again, I had to ask Copilot to summarize this for me, as I'm not a traditional dev, but effectively you have imperative and declarative languages. And in an imperative language, think your traditional programming languages, you not only tell what you want, but how to do it. So in this example, I'd like a Big Mac. In an imperative language, now we've all got the jingle stuck in our heads, 2 beef patties, special sauce and cheese, etc. Right? The recipe for a Big Mac. That's how you do it. Whereas with PowerFX, I pull up to the drive-thru and say, I'd like a Big Mac. PowerFX figures out the where, the when, and the how behind the scenes, and just says, here's your Big Mac. I want to add these two numbers together, and it figures all that out and says, here's these two numbers added together. There are some power, if we want to get super technical, there are some PowerFX expressions like concurrent and whatnot that allow you to dictate a little bit of the when and the how, but for the most part, you just tell it what you want and PowerFX works out the rest of it.
Yeah, and I think this is a mind shift, right? So a lot of the questions that I'm hearing from the community is, oh, can it do this or that? And they're thinking from an imperative perspective, like, because they're used to writing C# code. Yeah. They can't try to change their mindset to say, all right, this is more of a declarative language, and this is how it's going to work. A very good example is, can I debug it? Can I actually go into it step by step and see what it's doing? Not the same, although Microsoft has heard that feedback and they want to try and address it. But yeah, maybe over time, I think those things are going to mature, and then we'll be able to see how it's going to work moving forward. One thing to note is that, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that further down the track. Traditionally speaking, when we had local or we had Procode plugins, those would be compiled into a DLL. They will be in an assembly. And that assembly is packaged within your solution, and then you deploy it, and then you push it into like a server somewhere in Microsoft, and then they would have some worker processes hosted on Azure that would pick up that DLL, find out exactly what you're trying to execute, and then execute the language that is in there. With the language, with PowerFX specifically, if you actually include it into your solution and then you export that solution, specifically low code, you will notice that it's actually still the way you wrote it. It's not necessarily compiled. So it's something that is passed into an interpreter on the Microsoft server side, where it actually takes this information and then executes the code behind it. So the models are slightly different, and that's important to actually note. So the best way to do it is just try to write a local plugin, put it into a solution, export that solution, unzip the file, and then read the XML that is behind it. You will notice that there's no DLL behind it. What's happening on the server side is a different story, and then maybe Microsoft can actually add some more documentation over how it works, but it's definitely not compiled into a DLL in there. Cool. So let's jump straight into it. Nathan, we'll do the demo. I think I'll start with the PAC CLI bit, because the PAC CLI gives you a good understanding on how to do it, like step by step. And I'll just give you a very quick, like high level brief of how Canvas apps work. And specifically, I'm going to be leveraging Copilot in Canvas app to show you how we can actually leverage some of that PowerFX capabilities. Nice. And then I'll hand over to you, Nathan. You'll talk about model-driven formula columns and local plugins, which is my favorite topic.
Mine too. But I'm excited to see the CLI.
All right. Okay. So in order to use the CLI, what I'm going to do is jump into Visual Studio Code. That's probably one of the easiest way to do it. And I've also noticed that at the moment, if you do PAC, PAC, which is the Power Platform or Power Apps CLI, so PAC, it actually, and you try and do REPL, which is the execution of PowerFX, it only works within Visual Studio. So that's why I actually wanted to show it to you in here. Hopefully the font is big enough. So as things start showing up, yep, that's big enough. And then we're going to go and show you what's going to happen in here. So for those of you that are not familiar with PAC, and Nathan, I really want to convert you. I really want you to,
right. I'm
love
PAC. I am open. Yep.
Right. So you can install it through Visual Studio, or you can install it through an MSI that you can download. And then once you've got it, then that command, PAC, will be recognized by your system. So when you type PAC and you hit enter, it's going to tell you, oh, I'm waiting for some more information. And those are the different commands that are available in there. And if you look at it, there's actually quite a lot that you can do. For people that have used PAC before, they see value in it, they see power. In fact, at the Canadian Summit, there is one of the presenters, Thomas, was actually building an entire environment, code first, so command line first. So he used PAC to create a new solution. He used PAC to create a new environment. So you can use the admin capabilities to spin up a new instance. And then he again used solution to push the solution that he created locally into that environment. So in other terms, he created the solution from an environment from scratch, created the solution from scratch, and then hydrated that environment with that upcoming solution. All of that using code first, starting from the command line. So this is really powerful.
So sorry to interrupt, Rami. So this means he could start to automate some things.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at the ALM accelerator for Azure DevOps, you will notice that a lot of the automation is actually driven by the PAC CLI. So a lot of those are hidden commands behind some of those tools.
Got it. Okay.
So when you use PAC, the first thing you need to do is connect to your environment. So you can do that using PAC auth. Now, I'm already connected to an environment, so not really connected, but I already have it in my list of environments I want to connect to. And specifically, this is the one that we'll be using today. So it's using my DXC account, and it has a star next to it, which means that's the one that I'll be using. Ignore the the other one that's default environment for another client that I'm working with. So now that you've got that, let's have a look at what are the commands between PAC Power FX. And then straight away it's going to tell you, okay, you typed in PAC Power FX. However, there's two things that you can do. You can either do REPL, which is a live interpreter. So basically, REPL stands for read, evaluate, print, and loop. So this is an interpreter that will start and then will say, all right, give me a PowerFX command. I'll execute it for you and I'll give you the responses back. I've got a cheat sheet at the top in here where I'll copy and paste some of those and then show you how you can interact with REPL. And then the next,
sorry to interrupt, Rami. So this is actually executing the code, or this is testing my code?
This is most likely testing your code because you're going to do it line by line, right?
Yep.
So when you're trying to formulate something, I mean, unless you know exactly what you want to do, like for example, you want to do a patch, and I'll show you how this one is going to work, the patch, you can actually execute your code. You can just say, that's what I want to do, and then you execute it, and it will be live. And in fact, I've got another environment. So that environment that we connected to, I'll just show you what we have in here. And then as I execute those commands, then I'll show you what the results are going to be. The other one is run. So run is actually when you feed it a script and you say, actually, execute all the content that is available in there, and then it will give you a response back. And again, this is going to be executing a script, and then just whatever is in there will be executed. So let me quickly show you the environment. I think it's that one in here. So it's a very simple, very sort of minified model-driven app. It's called Base Application. It has a bunch of contacts. You will notice those contacts have random names. So maybe looking at the names, you will know, like the era that I grew up with, being a big fan of Sylvester Stallone and Rocky and Rambo.
Get in the ring sometime.
Exactly, right. And yeah, so you also notice that, some interesting characters that I've got in there. The reason why I've got that in there because I was doing a testing with Power Pages. So I just wanted to break it and see if I put in some, injected code in there, whether it's going to execute it or not. Just a side story, just something interesting happening in there. But anyway, this is it. So the values are really simple and straightforward. What I'm going to do is what I call the awesomizer. So I'm going to turn some of the values in here, especially the surnames, into awesome. Very simple scenarios just to show you, how it works. Nothing too magical. So the first thing I'm going to do is, first of all, go back, PowerFX, REPL. So given that I've already told it which environment I need to connect to, so as you can see, it's connecting to my DXC environment, and it's going to tell me in a second that I'm connected, and it's ready to trigger the interpreter. So this is Rami's environment, and soon it will have a little prompt in here saying it's ready. Now, if you copy and paste, so I'm going to copy and paste from the examples I've got in there and put them in, at the bottom. You will notice if you do a Control-V, it will give you that weird character. Don't use that. Do Shift Insert, which is actually another way of doing a paste, but then it's more recognized by the command lines. So something as simple as just writing context will actually connect to your environment and then retrieve the list of contacts that you've got in there. And that's the exact same list that we were actually looking at in that environment. So the next one that I'm going to do is just start running some filters, right? So you filter contact, give me the one that has Rambo in the first name, and that returned a simpler version of what was in there, a filtered version.
Very fast.
Now, yeah, very fast, very simple. And this is a way where you can, like right now, we're just doing reads. So we're testing our commands, just making sure that it's doing the right thing. Sometimes you don't want the entire record. You want to return maybe one of the elements, so one value. So for example, the GUID behind a specific contact. And that's the exact command. Rather than using a filter, I'm using a lookup, and I'm saying only return the contact ID, and it's returning the GUID. And don't worry if it says GUID and then parentheses and double quotes and all of that. It's actually just a GUID. So as you were saying, Nathan, like if you concatenate it with another string, it will automatically know how to convert it into the right format and give you the information that you need. And quite often, as your scripts become more elaborated, then you actually want to set a value. So I want to run a query, I want to set a value, and I want to use that value somewhere else. So use the set command, the set formula, set person GUID, and then get me this information. So now person GUID is that GUID in here. So if I go and write person GUID, then it's going to give me that GUID. So now you can think, as I'm actually building that script, I can do multiple things. I can store variables, I can retrieve information, and then I can reuse that variable somewhere else to do an execution. Now, the last one is going to be an edit, right? So we're going to say patch. So go and find the contact where the first name includes Rambo, and then do a patch on that and change the last name into awesome. So let's execute that. And I run it in here. This is going to be an update onto the solution that I've got. And then if I'm going to switch into my other environment, so just waiting for it to actually execute, and now it's done.
Like we're hacking into the matrix here. This is very cool.
Exactly. So I'm going to do a refresh in here. As you can see, Rambo has been updated to awesome. So very simple, very straightforward capability in there, but very powerful as well. So if you know what command you want to do and you want to execute it, then you just go there and then you do it really quickly. Now, you can do iterations as well. So if your filter is actually returning a bunch of information, then so if I copy that element in here where I'm just doing a filter, right? And I paste that, it's going to return 2 objects. And if I insert that into a for all, and then I'm going to say for each one of those, pass it as this record and its type of contact and do a patch and change it to awesome, then it's going to execute that capability as a loop. Exactly.
Very cool.
Right. So instead of doing that, I'm going to bundle that same command within a script, right? And then that script can be significantly more elaborated than that, more complex. But I'm going to keep it simple just to do a loop in here to go through all the contacts that have a first name of Rami and turn them into awesome Rami. So in order to execute that, I need to exit my REPL, so my interpreter. And now I'm back to the command line. And now I can do PAG power FX and then -F for the file. And I'm going to say use the script that is in that specific folder. -E for echo. Those are shortcuts. So -file or -F and -echo or -E is going to give you this information. So echo so that we can actually see it execute. Otherwise, it's going to be very silent. So I forgot to put in run in here. So we need to say power FX run -file -echo and then run that. And then as you can see, it connects. It reads the information from that file, it executes it, and it tells us what is executing.
So Rami, sorry to interrupt again. So when I need to make updates to, say, a number of records in the system, instead of using Power Automate, this could be a lightweight, more performant way to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the use case that I really see in the REPL case, or the run specifically, is to integrate it within a pipeline. So assume you're deploying a solution and you've got either pre-deployment steps or post-deployment steps. Typically, we would go to PowerShell to do all of that. And PowerShell requires people that know PowerShell, that are experienced in it, and then it's quite complex. It's quite an art by itself. Whereas now that we have the PowerFX run, then you can say, hey, before I deploy that solution, can you please run those Power FX? And a functional consultant can actually build that for you and then include it into your pipeline. Or as a post-deployment step, like once I deploy it, then I need to hydrate my environment. I need to create new records. I need to go and update existing ones, do a data fix, whatever. All of that can now be
master
delegated
data, reference data.
Exactly. A functional consultant can take that responsibility, write a script in Power FX, test it in their local environment, and then bundle it within a pipeline.
I like it.
So let's quickly have a look at what happened in here. So you will notice that we're going to have Rami Awesome and Rami Awesome in here. Both of them have been updated just by running that specific script.
Yeah.
So this is what I wanted to demonstrate from a PowerFX pack command line, and just explaining about some of the power that you can have and where you can use it. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them now. We've got 25 minutes left, and I am conscious that you've got a lot on your plate to present as well, Nathan, but I'm happy to take a few questions. Do we have any questions on the call? Maybe you can see, Nathan, if there's anything in the chat or anybody with their hands up.
Take a quick look. Is it from Amid? Is it possible to do reference data import as part of ALM using PowerFX, something like doing data import during deployment?
100%. Yes, you can. And in fact, like one of the big problems that we had with data imports is that when we're using a pipeline, we use CMT, the configuration management tool, and that is basically just a mini data migration, if you want, or data import for existing reference data and things, master data, as you mentioned, Nathan.
Yep.
One of the problems with CMT is that, and in fact, if I'm not mistaken, you can do pack tool or tools, and then it will tell you that CMT is one of them. Yeah, CMT, configuration migration tool, is that it fails silently. So if it tries to import something and it cannot import it, you will still get a green tick part of your pipeline. And then it's not until you go live and then you start using the system and things start failing, you realize, hang on, there's missing data in here. And then you go back to your pipeline, it's like, but the CMT was green. And then you look into the information in the actual step and it will tell you, yeah, I imported 15 out of the 20, but it doesn't fail, right? So replacing that with something like Pack Power FX Run will actually give you those errors back, and then we'll be able to behave better in your pipelines. Definitely a very good scenario where we can use it there.
Yeah, super useful. Ben, you've got your hand up, mate.
Yeah, hey guys. Quick question, Rami. Have you had a chance to look at it, or do you know where it's at with sort of actions, especially around the Dynamics products, like closing opportunities, cancelling orders, that kind of thing? Because I just see this being really useful for tidying up, but I don't know where it's at with actions.
Yes, 100%. It's not available right now, unless you can correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan. But no, they don't support actions. They do support, and then maybe you can talk about it in low code, connections. So if you've got custom connectors, then you can start using those. But actions is probably one of the top asks for Microsoft. And the reason why this is really important, and you're making a good point here, Ben, is that it's bridging the gap between low code and pro code. So you have your action that you've written using pro code. It does some really complex stuff. You don't want to repeat all of that in your Power FX. All you want is an option to call it. And 100%, that's a very good scenario, and Microsoft knows about that.
Yeah. Awesome. So you can do that in a Canvas app today if you add the environment table in Dataverse. So there is that lets you access all of the plugins that are in the system. So and so that does bridge that pro code low code gap. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Cool. I'm quickly going to go into my Canvas app. So now we're done with the command line, and I would just want to show you how you can use Power FX within Canvas apps. I'm going to keep it really simple, and the purpose of this demo is more to focus on the Copilot capabilities that can generate your Power FX in Canvas app, because when I come to using Canvas apps, I'm always like, a bit stressed because I don't know what the syntax is. I don't know how to start, where to start, what to do. I have a high level understanding of what it's supposed to do, but I wouldn't be able to start writing code the way I write C#, for example. So right here, we've got a very simple Canvas app. Don't worry about the Copilot stuff on the right-hand side. This is just to demonstrate that now you can actually embed the Copilot capabilities within the Canvas app so that end users can use it. So this is something very powerful, but probably a topic for a different day. What I've got is an input text field. I'm actually quickly going to show you what it does. I can say hello in here, and then I can just type in whatever, and then all what it will do is just repeat that same text into that box in here. Now, I'm going to request a change in the formatting. So I'm going to go to color, for example, which is quite empty right now. So it's always going to default to a black color. And I'm going to say to Copilot, so now most of those controls will have a Copilot link to them. So I'm going to click on Copilot and say conditional formatting, and I'm going to ask it to do something for me. Now, just so that I don't type something wrong and then try something that should work, I'm going to say in here, change the font color to red if the first name text contains hello. So this is first name. So first name.text should contain the word hello. And then if that's the case, then I want the formatting in here to turn into red. So I'm going to pass this information to Copilot. And here you go. It's actually giving it a good attempt. And it says if first name.text in hello, color.red. Now, that's not exactly what I asked for. If you test that code, so I'm going to click on apply. And now all of a sudden, that is the behavior that is behind color. So if first name.text in hello, then highlight it in red. What I ask is the other way around. So if hello is in first name.text. So the behavior right now is that if I type something that looks like hello, then it will highlight it in red. But the moment it goes beyond that, it doesn't work anymore. What I wanted to do is the exact opposite. So that's why it's Copilot, not Autopilot. It gives you a good start. It gives it a good stab. But then ultimately what you want is something that is a bit more refined. So now that I've fixed that specific command, now, if I say anything that doesn't have hello, then it's not going to work. But the moment there's the word hello in there, then it's going to highlight it in red. So slight nuances, slight differences. It did its best to try and execute what I wanted, but then it didn't understand. And once I actually corrected it, then I've got the right product in there. So yeah, that was just a very quick demo just to show you that if you don't know how to use it, then Copilot is being introduced. It's not everywhere. So if you're going to use low-code plugins, for example, it's not going to have that Copilot feature, that Copilot capability. But, use your imagination. Given how big Copilot is, you can think what the next step is going to be from a product perspective. Yep. But yeah, that will become more and more available in there. All right. I'll have to hand over to you, Nathan. I know we're running out of time. Yeah. So yeah, just over to you. Do you want to start sharing on your side?
Yeah, let me start sharing my screen. So we'll go very quickly through the model-driven app side of things in terms of modern commands and custom columns, just because those are fairly stable features, and we've done quite a bit of that in the past. I assume my screen is coming through.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start with modern commands. So when you are crafting apps for your clients, they will often ask for a button to do something, and this has traditionally required pro dev support. We've needed someone to go into a record and write some code to stick a button in the ribbon. So this has required JavaScripting. Sometimes it requires C# if they need to call a plugin or something like that. But what we can do is we can actually go ahead and start crafting these with PowerFX ourselves. Now, personally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of giving people a button just because my preference is good processes to automate stuff where possible, but it's not always possible. Sometimes they need a button, sometimes they insist on a button, and the good news is it's now very easy to give them a button. So I'll just pop into the model-driven app editor and just show you how you do this. And when you edit your model-driven app, there's an option. Once you've added a Dataverse table, there is an option to edit the command bar. This is going to pop up a new editor, and you can edit the grids or the main form for your Dataverse tables. And so I've done some demos on this a few years ago, but what I call the Sales Easy button. And what this does is, the idea being, I'm a salesperson on a record. I need to research them on Google and LinkedIn and then create some related rows. And so I've given them a button to go ahead and do that. And so I've got my PowerFX code here. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm going to run. So I can launch LinkedIn and Google into separate browser tabs. I can update the record that I'm working on to say I've done certain things. I can create a record related to it with some details. And then I can just give the user a notification, just because that's really good system design, to say I've actually done something. And you can give them a type of notification, success, failure, and then something really nice they let you do is you can put in milliseconds a timeout, so that banner just automatically disappears after a certain period of time, which is really nice. Something that in the Maker portal, I wish they would do with things like having exported or published a solution, because if you don't physically dismiss them, they pretty much stay there forever. So the other thing I can do is I can set the visibility of this. So I can put in a PowerFX formula to say, if the value on this record is equal to yes, then don't show the command, because I don't want them to press it more than once. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to go and toggle these back to no, so it shows. Just wait for this to save.
The suspense is killing me, Nathan.
I know, right? Nathan should have been better prepared. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's press the Sales Easy button. And all right, now you do need to be logged into LinkedIn. And unfortunately, it logged me out. So when you are logged in, it will go and pass the full name of the contact into LinkedIn and just automatically search it for you, which is really cool. And I have edited out the Google search just because that was failing. I commented it out just because I thought I did. I've been having a little trouble with this one, but they've changed the format of the Google search URL, and I was getting some errors. But that's how you can launch open stuff with data from Dataverse. Now, if we come over here to the opportunities, you can see that it's created a new opportunity for us linked to this record. And if we go back to the contact, the button's disappeared and it's toggled these values. So that's the modern commands. This feature's been around for a couple of years. It went GA. I want to say 18 months ago. It's been a while, so it's a fairly stable feature. Super useful when you need a button to do something. And if you get to the point where PowerFX can't quite do what you need to do, you can run JavaScript as opposed to PowerFX. So that's modern commanding. Any questions on that before I move on to calculated
Nathan,
columns?
Like, I really love it. I really love what I'm seeing in here. My question to you is, how do you think they can improve that? Maybe like, you know, and I might give you a hint in there. Why just the command bar?
Yeah. So what I would love to see, and this is Nathan's opinion. This is nothing official. I would love to see PowerFX being used to allow us to work with the user interface in the model-driven app, the same way you can in Canvas app. Because at the moment, we've got the business rule, and that's served us well. Rami, I don't know what your experience is, mate, but generally speaking, on most of my projects, we rapidly reach the point where the business process or the requirements exceed what makes sense for a business rule. And so we find ourselves writing JavaScript, and best practice is not to mix and match, right? Once you're writing JavaScript, turn off the business rules, or you are asking for troubleshooting hell. I would love to see the ability to use PowerFX to write some more powerful logic around shows and hides and client-side logic in the model-driven app. A couple years ago, there was something in the docs about being able to use PowerFX in business rules, and it just disappeared. So my guess is that it was considered and something didn't work out. So
yeah. Our stand is the same. Like, business rules are very limited. You reach the limitation very quickly and realize you're writing JavaScript anyway, so you might as well get rid of them just to have some consistency. We've got a question from Amit in the chat saying, just like JavaScript, you know how you can write them as a web resource, and then when you're configuring your form, you would say, well, there's a file in there that has some logic, and you use that. Can you use the same with PowerFX? So write it in a file, and then in your command bar, just point to that file and say the logic is there.
I assume you mean a JavaScript resource?
Well, but PowerFX resource.
Sorry, I'm really not understanding.
So just like you have a JavaScript web resource, you would have a PowerFX web resource.
Got
so
it.
You would write it in a file and then reference it.
I've never thought about that. I don't write JavaScript myself, so I'm probably not the best guy to ask.
As far as
Rami,
I know, it's not possible, but it's a good suggestion. And I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of us coming from a JavaScript or a C# background and trying to have parity with the way things are done. And those are all very good suggestions. If you have it in a PowerFX file, then that means reusability, right? So if you have a common library that you would like to reuse across multiple forms, rather than copy and paste the same commands over and over again, then that's a good idea. I mean, this is good feedback and something that we can discuss with Microsoft.
Yeah, absolutely. What the command is actually doing in the background is it's actually compiling a Canvas app behind the scenes, and that's where your formulas are stored. So, okay, just conscious of the time. Should we move on to the calculated columns?
Yep.
All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to launch this app. All right, so calculated columns let you run all kinds of different scenarios where you need to calculate stuff, generate stuff within Dataverse. So the idea is that they will replace the traditional calculated column. Pretty much the only thing they don't handle at this point is currencies. But if I come in here to my app, so let's go, and I'll just show you how I used this in an app that I wrote to predict match winners at the Rugby World Cups, the women's and the men's, over the last few years. And so what I did in this app was, this app would go out and it would troll Bing News for articles about the teams that were playing each other. It would then run the content of those articles through Azure Sentiment Prediction, and then would predict a winner based on the Azure Sentiment scores. And what I did was I used PowerFX calculated columns for this predicted winner field. And I'll just show you the formula that I put together, because it let me do something really cool. Columns, here we go, and predicted winner. All right, now, so this is my formula. This is what the column is going to return. So I'm basically able to nest a bunch of if statements and say, if the sentiment scores are 0, then you haven't predicted it. So say that you're predicting the winner. If the sentiment score is the same but it's above 0, say it's too close to call, Otherwise, put in the name of the home or the away side based on who has the higher predicted sentiment score. So let me just show you this in action. Now, when we say PowerFX works exactly like Excel, this is where you're going to get a good view of that. So let me just go ahead and save. So you can see that this just recalcs on the fly based on the underlying data. So if we go in and let's give them both an equal score, you can say the match is too close to call, and then it's going to change based on who has the higher overall sentiment. But it's just recalculating that on the fly based on the underlying data. So very cool way to do some interesting stuff with your data when you need to compare things, calculate things. The one call out that I would make is it doesn't persist. So just like an Excel spreadsheet, this is going to recalc on the fly. So definitely, if you need to store a history of what it was, or once it's calculated, it needs to persist, then this is probably not the best way to go. The other thing you can do with it, if we come up a level, is you can access data in your n-to-one rows. So if we go, now this is a one-to-many. I created an n-to-one back to it because it's in this scenario it is a one-to-one. So I'm kind of faking it a bit, but it allows me to just go. It'll go back. It allows me to reference data from related tables in my calculated columns, which is super useful. And so you can see we've basically got the same formula here, just referencing it from another table.
Yeah. So Nathan, is this executed on the server side or on the client side?
Yeah.
So the question that Amit is asking is, is it possible for it to happen on change? As in you just changed the value on the form, you haven't saved it yet, and to do a recalc, or do you have to save and then it would then execute?
Yeah, I believe it's happening server side. Rami, you might know a little more than I do, but yeah, because I have to save it to see it. So it's not happening on the client side. Yeah, recalc on change. Yeah, if you wanted to do that, you'd be talking JavaScript. So again, when I was talking about being able to make client-side changes in the model-driven app, that would be super useful for those scenarios where we have to write JavaScript to do that kind of stuff. PowerFX to me is just a natural solution for that.
Yeah. I think formula columns actually happen at the database level, if I'm not mistaken. I believe there's either an interpreter that works like a plugin to execute after the event, and then go and do the update or pre-event, but it happens like on the server side. Whereas, as you said, like if it's more JavaScript side, then it's not necessarily at the column level, but more at the user interface level. All of that. So if you did the same thing using like a REST API and go and update those values, they will reflect on the server side.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the interesting challenges would be, knowing, that handoff between servers or client side and server side. But I mean, given that PowerFX kind of recalcs on the fly like Excel, to me, it just kind of seems like a no-brainer, a natural for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Should we have a look at low code?
Yeah, we are at time. So let me pop into low code plugins. So I won't go through the basics of low code plugins just because I feel like I've covered quite a lot of that in the last year, but I will take you through the new stuff. So the big new thing in the low code plugins world is they have lit this up with connections. So all of your connections in your Power Apps environment are now available to you in low-code PowerFX plugins, which is really, really cool because that pretty much makes them endlessly extensible. So let me show you.
So if I ask the trivial question, Nathan,
Yep.
How did you get to the Dataverse Accelerator app?
Oh yeah, great question. So if you create a new environment, this is going to automatically be installed in your environment. If you have an older environment, you'll need to go to App Source, and that will let you install the Dataverse Accelerator into an older environment.
So it's a free app that is provided by Microsoft that you can add into your instance if you don't have it.
Yep. Yeah, cool. Great question. Yeah, so built by the PowerCat team. It's basically, I looked into it. It's basically a custom page. That's basically what it is behind the scenes. But it lets you create instant and automated plugins. So let me show you. I've got one just to give you an idea of what the connections can do. I've hooked up to a random trivia API just to pull back a random trivia fact just to illustrate these connections in play. So I've got, so this is a very simple plugin. You can see that we've got all of our connections that we've hooked up to in the Maker portal available to us. And when you come here, you click the connection. And if you copy, let me just pop up a notepad. This is going to show you, it's going to give you the PowerFX expression. Now, one thing that I will point out is that the IntelliSense doesn't always tell you in low-code plugins exactly what the connector wants. So if you're troubleshooting it at all, best bet is go with the Canvas app because the IntelliSense there is a bit more comprehensive in terms of what that connector is looking for. But again, this is just a basic plugin. It's just going to call this connector and spit out a random trivia fact. So let's come over here to I've created just a Canvas app to play with this. And so here's my plugin. So it's just going to set a variable and it's going to display my random trivia question here. So let's go ahead and run this. And we got a random trivia fact via the low-code plugin. So that's the biggest thing that they do at this point. Now, why would you want to get a random trivia fact in your Canvas app? And why wouldn't you? But this this means that we are now endlessly extensible in terms of what these can do. So while we're here, just to get back to that earlier question about your ProCode plugins. So if you add this environment table, come over here and you now see all of the plugins out of the box. Anything custom that you've written is available to call in your PowerFX expression.
That's really nice.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's who wants to get irresponsible with plugins? Let's do some crazy stuff. All right. I'm going to take that as a yes. So I have some of the stuff that I've been actually let's go with. We'll go with the automated one first, and then we'll get really irresponsible. So this is a plugin that I created to show how many connectors I could mash into one, and just to see how it works. So this is just so the difference between the instant and the automated plugins is instant. Again, think in the context of Power Automate. Instant is triggered by a user doing something. Automated runs on a create, update, or delete in Dataverse. So I created this one to call a bunch of different connectors to basically just see how much mischief I could get up to. So this one is going to give us a random dad joke. It is going to give us the weather in the city that we specify. I've commented out this currency converter. This is a custom connector. Matthew Devaney details how to use this one in his blog. It's a great blog. Unfortunately, I've been getting massive errors with this. There's low-code plugins and custom connectors don't play together super nicely at the moment, so I've commented that out. It worked once. I got a clip of it on YouTube, and then it started throwing tantrums. We're going to get a Ron Swanson quote, because again, who doesn't want a Ron Swanson quote? Random trivia. And then this is something I've been playing with, setting the name of the column. So we're going to count the rows and then bump it up by 1. Now, something I just want to check. This has been randomly switching between pre and post operation in the last few weeks. So I just want to check again. Your plugin formula is going to vary whether you're running it pre or post operation in terms of your count rows and whether that row exists. So let's pop over to our model-driven app. Stuff we don't need, and let's see this thing in action. All right, so I've got to give it. Let's see what the weather's like down where Rami is. And I'll put the currency stuff in, even though that's not going to run. So once I save this, the plugin's going to give us a joke, a Ron Swanson quote, random trivia, the weather conditions in Wellington. It won't convert currency just because I've commented that out. But these are all connections that it's going to run. We'll cross our fingers and toes. Oh, no. I haven't sacrificed something big enough to the demo gods today. So let's see.
Right. So when you get an error, like is your point of call to actually have a look at the trace in here and understand what's happening?
Yeah, that's usually what I do. So this was working earlier, and I'm not sure why it's not working now.
Is it looking for?
There we go. Okay,
here you go.
All right. Okay, so we got a joke. We got a Ron Swanson quote. We got a random piece of trivia, and it is mostly cloudy in Wellington. Is that accurate, Rami? All right.
Yes, it is.
Whew. Okay. I was starting to worry there that the demo gods were not in my favor today, but that is a plugin calling multiple different connections synchronously, and all written just with PowerFX expressions. In theory, there are no limit to the number of connections that a plugin could call. The one thing you'd have to be mindful of is that hard 2-minute timeout in Dataverse for your plugin. So that's probably the biggest thing you'd have to be aware of. All right. So that's the connections. Let's get into some more complex and possibly irresponsible scenarios. So something that I've been playing with is this idea of I've had questions around, can you trigger a plugin from Power Automate? Can you trigger Power Automate from a plugin? And the idea being plugins execute synchronously. The low-code ones do. The traditional C# ones that you write, you can specify whether it's sync or async. Whether that comes to low-code plugins, that's feedback that if people want it, we can pass on to the product team. But in the meantime, you can use Power Automate. So say you have a synchronous process, but you want to execute it asynchronously. What I've done is I've created this flow to trigger multiple plugins. And so something I've been playing with is we're starting to come up against API limits and whatnot in Power Automate. And traditionally, we've used Power Automate for a lot of our heavy lifting. What if you had a process that requires some real grunty Dataverse stuff? Could we possibly use Power Automate as our orchestration engine and then use plugins in the meantime to do some of the other processing? Because the low-code plugin calls the iOrganization service, so it's going to it will count against your service protection limits in Dataverse, but it doesn't count against your API calls when you're using the web API calls. So same scenario that we just went through, where we got a joke and a quote and all of that. I have set these up as separate instant plugins, and so you have to use instant for this because they are they call it a plugin. It's actually a custom API or an action if you want to get really geeky about what these elements actually are. Microsoft call it a plugin, probably just to make it a little easier to understand for your non-traditional dev. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to set the name, we're going to get the random trivia, get the weather, do some math, and then we're going to take all the values from these and we're going to update the row. So let's go back to our model-driven app, and I've created this table called test table because I couldn't spell chrysanthemum. And let's go ahead and let's do 100 plus 200. Let's get the weather here in Auckland. All right. Now you're going to notice some weird stuff when I trigger this. So it's going to throw a number here, and I'm actually going to have to refresh. So the performance it's a little iffy. It's not quite as fast as the instant plugin, but let's go ahead and save this. Just double check that my plugin has in fact been triggered. There we go. It's running. And it's ran. So let's come back here, and you can see it has named our table, given us a trivia question, partly sunny, accurate, and it's returned a calculation to us. So that is a Power Automate Cloudflow working as an orchestration engine for a number of plugins. So you may have some scenarios where you'd want to do this. This is something that I've been playing with. So again, it would be an async operation to then go and run a bunch of synchronous stuff in Dataverse. So, and yep, it's accurately counted the rows. So we are good to go. Now, something I did just to really kind of geek out on this, when you are running it this way, for the plugin that sets the name, if you're doing this in a if you were doing this in a pre-operation sense, you would add 1 to the number of rows it finds. When you're working in Power Automate, that row has already been created, so you've got to think post-op in terms of your plugin if you're doing any count rows or anything like that. So that's that is Power Automate. That is a plugin. Sorry, that is Power Automate calling a number of plugins. But what about the other way around? What if I want to synchronously call an async operation? So I want something to happen in Dataverse to then hand off to Power Automate to do stuff asynchronously. Now, it turns out you can actually do that. So there is a trigger. Switch to the old designer. No comment. There is. Might get in trouble for that one, but if you know, you know, right? There is a Dataverse action in Power Automate called when an action is performed. Well, guess what instant low-code plugins are? They are actions. And so we can find actions that we've created in low-code plugins. In this case, this is a table-bound one. And you can see I was so excited about it that I misspelled invoice. But when this runs, it's going to trigger my Cloudflow. So what I've done in this case is I am simply going to, when this plugin runs, it's literally going to update this record with this message to say flow updated and UTC now. So let me just pop back into my model-driven app. All right, so it's going to update this. Let's just clear it out. Now I'm actually going to have to trigger this from a Canvas app and it's going to drop a new invoice here. So the invoice is going to be created by the plugin, and the Cloudflow is then going to go and update this row. So I'll just show you the plugin that we're going to call. So this takes in some parameters, and oh no, this may or may not work. Keith Atherton and I were doing some performance type testing, and I thought I had pulled all this stuff out, and it hasn't. The main operation of the plugin should just be creating this sales invoice related to the sales order. Let's cross our fingers and toes here. Something that I've noticed in the Dataverse Accelerator app is some of the edits that I've made have sometimes not been saving. So let's let's hope for the best. All right. Okay, so this is my my sales order, and this is going to trigger the plugin. So I've got my plugin code here. Let's go ahead and trigger this and see if this calls Power Automate. All right. Back here. Did work earlier today. Look at that. It ran. So when we come back here to our sales order, you can see that Power Automate updated it with the current UTC time, and it has dropped the plugin dropped this in. So that's the other way around. If you wanted to synchronously call an async operation, so this is how you can match up low-code plugins in Power Automate. So yeah, that's just conscious that we are way over time. That's mostly what I wanted to take everybody through today. Just some of the stuff I've been working on in low-code plugins and some of the new stuff you can do. But it is, as you can see, it is a very cool feature. My personal feeling is that Microsoft have way undersold this in terms of what it's capable of. I am incredibly excited about it. Rami's incredibly excited about it. I think we're going to see big things in this space. Yeah. So yeah, Rami, that's that's what I've got.
That's really good. The only thing I wanted to add is as you create those instant plugins, if you use the XRM toolbox, you can go to, there's a tool written by Jonas Rapp, which allows you to test custom web APIs. So typically we would do those as code, we would deploy the DLL, use the plugin registration tool, and then you will be able to see that there is an extra entry in here in the custom web APIs where you can actually go and change that. What I've noticed is that the moment you create a custom low-code instant plugin, then it will appear part of your web APIs that you can test. So if you want to test them, then you've got a tool to actually do that. Yeah, so questions about GA and all of that. Yeah, we've been asking for that for a very long time. Watch that space. I would recommend you go and attend Build, or at least watch the news out of Build. I think there's quite a lot of features that will probably be either announced or will be made GA. So, you know, Microsoft is gearing up. Nothing guaranteed, but yeah, just watch that space. And then, it's not too far. It's not too far. We've been working on it for quite a while.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't ready last December, but it's... yeah, but it is, I would say it is very close to being ready.
Cool. What I'll do is I'll just share my screen. So just to close it up. So you want to talk about those last two slides, and then I'll just finish up.
Yeah, so invitation to join the low-code revolution. So this is so this idea of the democratization of technology. Over time, technology moves from the experts to the user, which means you get more of it faster and cheaper. And I see Power Effects as being the catalyst for that happening in our space of biz apps. Just to contrast this, think about the early days of the World Wide Web, early 1990s, back when I was in high school and dinosaurs roamed the earth. I had some friends who would get online and do stuff on message boards and stuff. Getting online was hard, using websites was hard. It was pretty much the domain of techies. Whereas today, you could register a domain and a website probably in the span of the session that Rami and I have been speaking today. It's gone to the hands of the users. The same thing is about to happen in biz apps with Power Effects. So yeah, so we need everyone we can get. Come join the low code side.
Absolutely. All right. Any final questions? Any other comments? Any feedback? You want to check the chat,
just taking
Nathan?
a look. Any brain benders? Yeah, Susie, it is still a little buggy. Like there's just weird stuff. Like the other week, we lost the ability to hit tab in the IntelliSense to autocomplete a formula. So we've reported that to the product team. I've noticed automated plugins randomly switching from pre to post operation, and that's a very big deal, because again, if you are doing an auto number based on a row count, that massively affects your formula. So yeah, there's still some little niggling stuff like that. I mean, if I had to put a number on it, I would say we are 85% of the way there for being GA ready. Rami, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So it's definitely getting there. Right now, just like don't use it in production is the recommendation, but do get your hands dirty on it, get to know it intimately, and then just wait for that GA announcement.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds really good. So just again, conscious of time, we're way over time. So just a final slide. If you guys want to reach us, we're available on the usual social media.
We're on all the things.
Yes, and this recording will be available on YouTube. So Nathan has his channel. If you're interested in my channel as well, this is where I put in all the recordings from the user group sessions, as well as the larger conferences that we do across New Zealand. So yeah, thank you very much, Nathan, for presenting today. I think I really...
Thank you, Rami. Yeah, and you converted me. I am keen to try the CLI. You sold me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hopefully the others got something out of that session. So thank you everybody for attending. It's a big pleasure to host you guys in here. And yeah, until next time, we'll see you again. Cheers.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you guys.